I didn't even recognize my own mother's voice when she called. "You need to come home," she said, and that was it. Nothing else. Just those 5 words, but somehow they carried a weight that made my chest tighten. My name is Ryan Walker. I'm 32, work as a freelance photographer in Seattle, and had been in a relationship with my girlfriend, Emily, for 6 years. We weren't married. We didn't live together. But she had been my constant, the quiet shadow following me through life, or so I thought. 4 months, our calls were short. Texts were routine. Silence filled the spaces where laughter used to live. I told myself it was stress, work, life. I was avoiding the truth that had been creeping in. She didn't seem to want me anymore. The call from my mother came the night after I got the news that my grandparents had passed. I had spent the week preparing for the funeral, trying to hold myself together while packing their house. I hadn't even thought about the hidden drawers, the boxes under the bed. My mother didn't explain. She just told me to come immediately. My car ride felt endless. The rain streaked across the windshield like it was crying with me. When I arrived, the house was quiet. Too quiet. They had found something. A small, locked box in my grandmother's closet. I had never seen it before. My mother handed it to me without a word. The lock was old, rusted, and surprisingly easy to snap. Inside were letters, dozens of them, and photographs. The photographs were of Emily. But not just Emily smiling at the camera or posing for selfies. These were private moments. Intimate. She wasn't alone. She was with someone else. Someone I had trusted. Someone who called himself my friend. I felt my stomach twist. My hands shook. Every memory we had shared, our weekend trips, the lazy mornings, the late-night dinners, everything felt like it had been a performance. I confronted her that night. We met at the small coffee shop where we had our first date. I didn't shout. I didn't plead. I just slid the photographs across the table. She looked at them, then at me. And she smiled. "You weren't supposed to find out like this," she said. Her tone was casual, almost bored. "Were you planning to tell me at all?" I asked, keeping my voice calm even as my chest felt like it was breaking. "I don't know. Maybe. But does it matter?" I looked at her. Really looked. The person I thought I loved, the person I had trusted, was gone. "You were convenient," I said finally. "Everything we had was convenient for you. My feelings, my time, they didn't matter." She shrugged. "You always knew I needed space. You were okay with it, weren't you?" I realized I had been. Too afraid to upset the balance, too eager to keep her happy. I had sacrificed my own needs for someone who never valued them. That night, I walked away. I didn't call her. I didn't text. I didn't chase. I stopped explaining. I stopped justifying. I stopped begging for a love that had never really been mine. The following days were a blur. Packing up my grandparents' belongings, sifting through memories, I felt unmoored. Their home had been full of laughter, of stability, of love that didn't demand anything in return. I realized I had been living in the shadow of that love, expecting Emily to give me the same kind of respect and care, and being devastated when she didn't. I decided to leave Seattle for a while. I booked a cabin by the coast, no phone, no internet. Just the sound of the waves, the wind, and the quiet. For the first time in years, I was not defined by anyone else's actions or approval. It wasn't instant healing. I cried. I screamed at the empty room. I hated her. I hated myself. But slowly, the rage turned into clarity. I started to see my own worth. I started to see that the betrayal, painful as it was, had liberated me. I'm not in a relationship now. I don't know if I ever will be. But I know this, I am enough on my own. I don't need someone to validate my existence. I don't need anyone to approve my happiness. The letters, the photos, the secrets, they didn't just expose betrayal. They exposed my own complacency, my willingness to accept less than I deserved. And for that, I am grateful. Life doesn't always offer closure. It doesn't hand you lessons neatly wrapped. Sometimes, it hands you heartbreak, and you have to sift through the rubble to find your own dignity. If there's one thing I want anyone listening to take away, it's this: Protect your heart. Respect your own time, your own emotions. Betrayal isn't just about what someone else did, it's about what you allow. And once you stop allowing it, once you stand for yourself, you begin to reclaim not just your life, but your soul. So, I left. I grieved. I rebuilt. And I learned that the most profound love you can ever experience is the one you give yourself. The cabin by the coast was nothing fancy, just a small, weathered structure perched on a cliff above the Pacific. But for the first time in years, it felt like mine. No distractions. No expectations. Just me, the wind, and the waves crashing below. The first morning, I woke before sunrise. The sky was bruised with color, and I realized I hadn't noticed the world like this in months, maybe even years. I poured coffee into a chipped mug, wrapped myself in a blanket, and watched. For the first time, I didn't need anyone else to make me feel safe. I spent the days walking the rocky shoreline, collecting driftwood, photographing the raw edges of the cliffs and the way the sunlight fractured on the waves. Every image I captured felt like a piece of myself I had been missing, the part of me that hadn't been tainted by manipulation, by dependence, by betrayal. And then came the night I found the envelope. It was tucked behind a loose panel in the cabin wall, left by the previous owner, apparently forgotten. Inside were letters, old, worn, but surprisingly intact. They weren't addressed to anyone in particular. But as I read, I realized they were about choices. About regret. About how easy it is to let someone else control your happiness, even when they don't deserve it. One line hit me harder than the rest. The person who betrays you only has the power you give them. I sat there in the dark, the ocean's roar in my ears, and something inside me shifted. I wasn't angry anymore. Not really. I was tired. Tired of letting someone else dictate my worth. Tired of letting betrayal define my story. The next morning, I called my mother. "I'm going to sell the house," I said quietly. She didn't argue. She just listened. She knew, without me saying it, that I needed to let go, not just of the house, but of everything that tied me to the past. "I'll help," she said finally. "You don't have to do it alone." And for the first time, I accepted help, not out of weakness, but because it was the right thing to do. Packing up my grandparents' belongings was harder than I expected. Their house smelled like memories, the faint perfume of my grandmother's lavender sachets, the waxy scent of old books stacked on the shelves, the quiet hum of the old refrigerator that had kept their meals fresh for decades. Each object carried a fragment of their lives, and of mine. But I didn't cry. Not for them, not for Emily, not for the life I thought I had. I felt a quiet resolve instead, the steady pulse of someone reclaiming their existence. When the house finally sold, I flew back to the city to tie up loose ends. I needed closure, not from Emily, but for myself. I went through our old messages, not to seek answers, but to understand how much time I had spent giving, hoping, and bending myself into someone she didn't care about. There was a message I almost deleted. One I had overlooked before. It was from the night she thought I was asleep. "I can't stop thinking about him. I don't want to hurt Ryan, but I can't help it." I stared at it for a long time. My chest tightened, but not with pain. It was clarity. She never loved me, not fully, not in the way that mattered. And that wasn't my fault. That was hers. I put the phone down. I didn't respond. I didn't reach out. I walked out into the city streets, letting the cold December air wake me up. For the first time in years, I felt unburdened. I had stopped carrying someone else's choices. In the weeks that followed, I threw myself into my photography. I worked late nights, editing, capturing, creating. And I started to notice something amazing. I was enjoying life again. Not because someone else had returned, not because I had proof of betrayal, but because I had returned to myself. I also started small. Coffee with friends I had neglected. A hike up the hills I used to love. Conversations with strangers in the park who reminded me how beautiful ordinary life could be. I learned to notice the little things, the smell of wet earth after rain, the way sunlight hit the corners of a room, the gentle rhythm of waves against rocks. Months later, I returned to Seattle, not to reclaim the past, but to face it. I walked past our old spots, our favorite cafe, the pier where we had watched fireworks. And I didn't feel bitterness. I felt gratitude. Gratitude for the clarity betrayal had given me, for the lessons that had been impossible to see while I was lost in the illusion of love. I didn't seek revenge. I didn't plan an elaborate confrontation. I simply lived, and in living, I reclaimed my dignity. The hardest part was accepting that life doesn't owe us neat endings. People leave. People betray. People disappoint. But the measure of your life isn't in the betrayal you endure, it's in the strength you summon afterward. I'm not perfect. I still have moments of doubt, of lingering sadness. But they no longer control me. They remind me that I survived, that I can rebuild, and that my happiness is mine to protect. If there's one truth I want anyone listening to carry with them, it's this: respect yourself first. Protect your heart. Value your time. Betrayal is painful, yes, but it can also be the spark that lights the path to self-respect, independence, and dignity. I don't think about Emily every day anymore. When I do, it's brief, like a shadow passing over my life. I think about my grandparents, their quiet wisdom, their steadfast love. And I think about the envelope in that cabin, the reminder that even in the aftermath of loss and betrayal, life offers clarity. It offers a way to reclaim what's ours. I still take photographs. I still walk along the cliffs at sunrise. I still listen to the waves crash, letting them remind me that life moves forward, relentless and beautiful. And in that movement, I found myself again. I am Ryan Walker. I am enough. And I finally know that no betrayal, no heartbreak, and no loss can take that away.